Tenants and advocates are upset after a landlord in Phoenix refused to rent the tenants who received pandemic rental assistance. I'm Tony, and this is Real Estate Investing and Landlord News. All right, so I have an interesting article for you today, and it's coming out of Phoenix, Arizona. Now, for those who've watched my channel for a while know I used to invest in Phoenix. I owned a fourplex unit up in northern Phoenix, and I recently sold it back in 2020 and made a heck of a profit off of it when I sold, okay? Because the market out there is super duper hot, even right now, okay? And the prices are going to continue to go up because there's a ton of people who want to move out there, specifically people from California who are being priced out of the ridiculously overcost, expensive areas in California. So they're looking for somewhere nearby with a nice mild climate, a much more affordable place, growing, great economy, a lot less rules and regulations, and Arizona is the place. And honestly, I loved Arizona. I wish I could move back. I can't anymore. I'm here in the Midwest for now, but maybe someday in the future I will. But the problem is that landlords out there, right? They are looking at these people who've received rental assistance and they're saying, hey, we're not going to be renting to them. And, that's their right. They have a right to say, hey, we don't want to rent to somebody who's received rental assistance. And the tenants, of course, they don't like this. They're like, hey, this isn't fair. This isn't fair. Well, tell the landlord, that they can't do whatever they want to do with their property. And, I'm 100% against you. Okay. They have the right to do that. They're not discriminating against you based on race or any of the other protected reasons. But they said, hey, we don't want to deal with people who have dealt with this government program. And in the case of the tenants who did receive rental assistance, not all of them are bad, but some of them are true garbage. And it's that landlord's rights to say, hey, I'm not dealing with it. So before I get into the article, go ahead, hit the like and subscribe button, maybe leave a comment down below and let me know what you think. What do you think of this landlord who says, hey, I don't want to accept any tenants who have received the pandemic rental assistance? Okay, me personally, that's not a deal breaker for me, right? And I imagine that most landlords, it's not going to be a deal breaker for, as long as that tenant now has employment history and work and the ability to pay the rent. Okay, but I can see that, if you're going through a ton of very, very qualified tenants for your unit, well, why don't we just weed out this one over here who we know wasn't able to pay the rent within the last year? Okay, it makes perfect sense to me. Okay. Anyway, let's get into this article. And it's coming from abc15.com, and it says, got COVID rental assistance? You may be denied housing. So this is an article that looks at it more from the tenant's perspective, but I'm going to still give you my opinions of it while we go through. So let's get started. Finding a valley rental is hard enough. How about being denied because you applied for rental assistance or that you asked about your application status too many times? Recently, Marlo found how choosy some rental owners have become. I knew it would be difficult, but not this difficult, Marlo says. She moved to Seattle to be near her daughters. Marlo found a job and is doing well, but misses the valley and wants to come back. And she finally thought she found an affordable unit. It's a 1-bedroom, 1-bathroom apartment in Phoenix for less than $1,000 a month, rented by property manager Market Edge Realty, LLC. Marlo looked through the rental application and the dozens of rental criteria she'd have to meet to get in. She says she doesn't have any bankruptcies and has good credit. But then Marlo saw something she says disturbed her. I don't know if that's legal, first of all, she says. One of the criteria states if rental assistance has been received or an application has been placed in the last 2 years from a government entity, nonprofit, friend, or family will lead to a decline. So, yeah, if this is what the landlord is saying, if you have applied for rental assistance, if you have received rental assistance, then your application will be declined. Now, that's a very interesting criteria there, and I don't really know how I feel about it because I don't think that at least in terms of my properties, I don't think that's a deal breaker. Okay, I think that even if you have received rental assistance, if you have the ability to pay your rent now, like a lot of people, okay, they were forcibly removed from their jobs during the pandemic. And then they were just told, hey, well, you can't leave your house, you can't do anything, etc., but still be able to pay your rent. Well, in that sort of situation, I can understand why they received rental assistance. They wanted to make good with their landlord, make sure that they didn't lose any housing at the same time, and they got that rental assistance. So the question then becomes, though, is this that person, or is this the person who said, well, I'm not going to pay rent because I don't have to. Yeah, I still have a job, but I don't have to pay rent. And now I'm getting this government check. And now, the landlord has to jump through all these hoops. And I don't care because I'm the tenant. I get to stay for free or whatever. If you're that kind of tenant, the one who, basically is just lazy, not working, doesn't even have a job now, won't be able to pay the rent in the future if there's no more government assistance, then I don't want to rent to you. So, it's questionable. But rather than trying to figure out which kind of tenant, if you're the good tenant who got rental assistance or the bad tenant who got rental assistance, this landlord is just saying, you know what? All of you are eliminated from this selection criteria. And I've got so many good tenants out there who have never received rental assistance, who aren't on Section 8, who, etc., that I don't have to worry about trying to deal with this nonsense, okay? So I can't say that I blame the landlord for doing it this way. And I do say that, I wouldn't, automatically do it for my business, but I understand why they're doing it that way for their business, okay? It makes things a lot quicker, especially in a market as hot as Phoenix. There's going to be more applicants than you can imagine who are just better candidates than somebody who lost their job or lost their pay and couldn't make their rent. Marlo asked the property manager if that includes COVID-19 assistance. They replied, yes, we would not be able to approve the application. I got behind on my rent and that's the only way to pay, she says. Marlo did get rental assistance thinking it was responsible, more given that she and thousands of others were going through during the pandemic. I lost my job because of COVID, she says. How does that make me a bad person? Well, nobody's saying that you're a bad person. We're just saying that there are better qualified tenants, and rather than trying to figure out if you're, one of the good ones or the bad ones, we just eliminate you completely from the process and go with ones who we know are good. Excuse me. Marlo thinks people like her are being penalized for doing the right thing. I thought it seems pretty unfair, says attorney Pam Bridge with Community Legal Services. They tried to get rental assistance to pay their landlord. The rental declines also include anyone who just applied for the assistance. We want to encourage tenants to continue to apply for rental assistance if they need it, Bridge says. But while she thinks the practice is unfair, illegal is another question. Bridge says landlords can rent to who they want unless it is considered discriminatory based on the Fair Housing Act criteria that protects race, color, national origin, religion, sex, including gender identity and sexual orientation, familial status, and disability. And it doesn't violate the terms of the Fair Housing Act, at least it doesn't appear to. And landlords, at least in Arizona, are given much more property rights than they are in other states. So they don't have to take a tenant who receives government assistance. They don't. If you don't want a Section 8 tenant in your property, you don't have to take one. That's a good thing, okay? This leaves it up to the discretion of the landlord who they put in their property, what programs they want to deal with, and the type of tenant that they want to deal with. And when you're talking about tenants who received rental assistance, be that from Section 8 or from pandemic relief, then, that might not be something that a landlord wants to deal with going into the future. She says those last two classes, familial status and disability, might come into play here. Section 8 is considered rental assistance and is used by people who are elderly and disabled. Yeah, computer froze up here. Okay, there we go. It basically would impact those people more than it would impact others, and that raises issues in my mind that there could be fair housing issues, Bridge says. Market Edge Realty LLC manages a number of Valley properties. They did not respond to our calls and emails asking for an explanation of their rental criteria. Like sometimes when if we were to respond, it would be misconstrued. But I always like to hear landlords replying because our story never gets told. You don't know the reasoning why this landlord is doing this. Maybe they got burned in the past, okay? If you're a landlord, you've dealt with rental assistance or Section 8 or whatever, and you've gotten burned by the government or burned by the tenants that were in there, then I don't blame you for not wanting to deal with that anymore, okay? But unless you get your story out there, no one will ever know that. All they'll think is, oh, this is just some greedy, good-for-nothing landlord who's screwing over people. Well, that's not always the case, okay? In fact, that's almost never the case. Most of the time, there are very good reasons why landlords are doing what they're doing. And I can't say that, oh yeah, this landlord is a bad guy when I don't know their side of the story. Now, even speaking of, they own other properties within the city, right? But they never said this was some huge landlord. Market Edge Realty LLC might be, individual owner who owns 5 properties. They could still be very likely a small landlord. And, meanwhile, you're sitting there thinking, oh, this is some mega rich corporation who's screwing people over. Well, I don't even think that this is an issue that is, huge within the city of Phoenix. I don't think most landlords are doing this. This is just one landlord who says, hey, this is what I want for my properties. And, that shouldn't be a problem at all. So interesting story, and I'm glad that at least in Arizona, landlords still have their property rights there and are able to take these kind of things into consideration and do what they want.